more death than the combined death of all the previous wars and the 9/11 incident, terrorist attack, combined casualties. Affected by such pandemic, China is probably the only one and the leading one to achieve a positive growth of GDP. Last year, it's up by 2.3% in 2020. And in terms of R&D, China's the total investment in R&D is up by 10.9%, way higher than the GDP growth rate. And for this year, China's economy is growing on a much stronger momentum. The first quarter of 2021 compared with the Q1 of 2020, it's 18.3% growth. It's remarkable growth. And that's what President Xi has said, that the whole country is full of resilience and vibrancy. And now, again, let me give you some numbers about the past May Day holiday situation. Like altogether, nearly 230 million passengers went on travel during that 5-day golden holiday. The railway transported 78 million people. And Shanghai has made the highest revenue brought by tourism, up by 40 billion RMB. I think these achievements can be attributed to the leadership of President Xi. Especially last year at the New Year's Eve, President Xi made a major decision to put the city of Wuhan in lockdown. This really takes a boldness and resolution. And let's again take a look at some model simulation. If Wuhan was not put in a lockdown on the 22nd of February of last year, then the total infection is going to be like 7.4 billion. Sorry, 744,000 cases outside of Wuhan. Because of the lockdown, actually there were only 29,000 cases confirmed outside of Wuhan. That means the lockdown of Wuhan has bought time for China to really keep the pandemic under control. So again, this shows the strong spirit of pandemic fighting. Putting life first, keep solidarity and respect science and technology. In terms of respecting science, and science and technology are the keys to win the war against the pandemic. And really, the vaccines are the most important scientific tools to win the war. We all know that it is biomedicine that helps to stimulate the natural immunity response of human body. And in our area, there are basically two types of vaccines. One, the traditional one, conventional one. The other is genetically engineered vaccine. And the thumb of rule to distinguish between the two is in the process of making it, do you really need a living virus or not? So the genetic engineered virus does not need a live virus. And now we, in terms of technology, it's got generation 1 all the way to 3. We had the first generation, that's the full virus, and then the second generation. And the third generation is RNA, DNA. In terms of the higher generation it gets, the more sustainable the immunity power gets. Generally, I believe China should have strong confidence in immunity. Every year that we have up to 1 billion shots of vaccines in China a year. So we have self-sufficiency in vaccine supply and vaccination. And such confidence also comes from years of investment in that. We also invested in talent network development. And in this, in particular, adenovirus platform. This is a new technology platform that we lately developed. Adenovirus itself, it's like a carrier, it's like a rocket. And Ebola is Ebola has some kind of protein, and for us, for COVID-19, we also take a spike. And adenovirus is very, very safe because it's, the virus itself is being knocked out. In 2014, August of 2014, a Canadian scientist published the gene sequence of Ebola vaccine, and within 4 months, we promoted the first clinical trial for the Ebola vaccine, and we were the first to launch this vaccine. In terms of Ebola control, we went to Sierra Leone, where the pandemic was most serious. We went there to validate the Ebola vaccine. This is the first time that we went out of China, and that's the results of the joint research by Chinese and African scientists were also published on Lancet. We also received U.S. and Chinese patent. It's received a certificate from FDA in China to really develop this vaccine. This is the first vaccine that's been developed by adeno vaccine. And just because of these years of accumulation of work, we had the confidence that we could launch relatively fast COVID-19 vaccine. This is when the 29th of February of 2020, Vice Premier Sun Chunlan took a team to our lab. I already had the vaccine shot in the arm, and Vice Premier Sun Chunlan came here with a big encouragement on us all. And last year, in 9th of March, we submitted our application, and we also passed the online long-distance interview. And on March 16th, it went on clinical trial, but it was faced with challenges because we didn't have enough volunteers to join us in the fact that we didn't have much of cases. And if this vaccine get on a clinical trial, it could really receive extensive international attention. That's why we are trying our best to perfect its ethical system. We hope that the test, it should be the vaccine should be time proven, should be. And also, Moderna's mRNA vaccine also was launched in clinical trial on the 16th of March, but it's on Seattle time. So we are about 8 hours earlier than Moderna's vaccine to go through clinical trial. U.S. vaccine scientists, they relatively enjoyed a more stable environment. And we had the first vaccine shot in Wuhan. That also gave us a stronger confidence. Last year's May 22nd, we were the first one to release the COVID-19 clinical trial data. Richard Horton, editor-in-chief of Lancet, who also gave us congratulatory remark earlier, he said that the first human trial COVID-19 vaccine finds that safe, well-tolerated, and induces effective immune response. And the clinical phase 3 clinical trial took place in Pakistan, Russia, Mexico, Chile, and Argentina. It's multi-centered, random, and blind trial compared with placebo. This is where our team went to Pakistan. See that everybody was full hazmat geared up, but we had masks on because all of us have already got vaccine shots, so we didn't get all the hazmat. We are confident of the effect of the vaccine. Adeno vaccine really itself is the first genetically engineered engineered vaccine in China. People care if there are any variation, whether it's going to affect the effectiveness of vaccine. Since China released the gene sequencing of this virus, we've seen that so far we got only about 1.82 million new variants. And we are focusing mainly on 5 variant units. The UK, South Africa, Brazil, India, and the US. India's variants are receiving extensive attention. In fact, the 2 mutations have actually taken place both in the US and in Brazil last year. In fact, the South Africa variant seemed to have more impact on the effectiveness of the vaccination. We are looking at how to, through a booster, address the South African variant more effectively. That's what we are looking at, the most menacing one. We have an ideal, which is that to develop a vaccine that is not to be shot or to take cold chain logistics. For example, it could hopefully that like a single dose that's not adeno, it's just breathable. We started a clinical trial last year in Wuhan, 19th of May. You didn't have to take a shot. You just take a breathe into that. It's only about 1/5 of that, of the dosage. So you don't have to worry about the vials, not enough glass vials to carry it. And if you could, this is really the most effective way. And in fact, in this year's 23rd of March, the SFDA already, just approved this particular type of way of injecting vaccine. We hope that we hope that Vice Minister Li will help us approve this new way of vaccination more rapidly, so more people will enjoy its benefits and convenience. People care about the vaccines a lot, but vaccines are important, but therapeutics are also very important. What if anyone caught the virus? What could they do? We can take a look at the latest figure of drug sales, top 20.
We can look at this list. The number one, its sales is about $20 billion per year. And this antibody is requiring a lot of technology. We also have a lot of technologies. We can use this platform to select 100,000 cells every second. We can create this single cell, and we can select one and put it on a plate. This can be used in the antibody drug. This is a DIY technology platform. We have selected many good antibodies. We have something with NTD. This is the first in the world, and it's published in Science. NTD is useful, and we think the receptor is not a single one. And this is proved by the team at Fudan University, headed by Professor Lulu. They have found that this receptor is a co-receptor of COVID virus, and we can inhibit this receptor. We go from science to application and back to science. We work together and move ahead. On May 21st, President Xi participated in the Global Health Summit and said the following things. We have provided 300 million vaccines. We will continue to do that. We will transfer technologies to developing countries, and we will manufacture together. We also support the sharing of IP In support of his requirements, we have done the following things. On August 11th, we got the invention patent authorization. We were the first to do that, and one of the 4 vaccines in China, we are the only one with a patent. In terms of patent sharing, in Shanghai, we are working with the Shanghai Pharma. We have expanded manufacturing with them. Now, Shanghai is using our single-dose vaccines in Jiangsu, Aostkang, and also we are working with them. We are also very delighted that 2 days ago in Pakistan, we got emergency use a long time ago, but 2 days ago, our vaccine began to be manufactured in Pakistan. The first one manufactured in Pakistan. This is in line with what Mr. President Xi said, transferring technology to our friendly nations. 3 years ago, the C919 plane took flight in Pudong. It increased our confidence. President Xi has said that Shanghai is a glorious city where we witness miracles. Biosafety is integral to national safety. It requires the participation of many departments and disciplines. We hope that we can work with the Lingang National Lab and the Yangtze River Science and Technology Innovation Center. We can achieve synergy, and the military and the local level can work together to protect the biosafety. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Chen Wei. We now have a better understanding of the importance of biosafety. Somebody on the internet has this appraisal of Ms. Chen Wei. She is an academician and a soldier. She is a general and also the pillar of the republic. Using vaccines, she has helped people see hope despite COVID. I think this is what we all think. Once again, a warm applause to Ms. Chen. Our next speaker is the 2013 Nobel laureate in chemistry and the professor of structural biology, Stanford University, Mr. Michael Levitt. DNA and the protein, he is an expert in these areas. In 2013, he developed a model and connected classic and modern physics, and he got the Nobel Prize in chemistry. And today he will talk about the basic innovation and the significance of basic innovation.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to be here in person. Suddenly, being at a place in person is worth so much to the person who is there. My talk today is a very general topic. It's about I ask a question: is basic science needed for significant and fundamental discoveries? So the work that I do is a discipline that is extremely multidisciplined, and I love to be in different countries. I've worked and lived in 4 different countries for more than 15 years each. I also enjoy being in China right now. I'm going to talk about 4 things: a little bit about the beginning of my field, which is multidisciplinary, a revolution in science, how I got involved, and then ask the question about basic science, and finally, some advice on how to win many Nobel Prizes. That's not for one person, it's perhaps for one institution or one country. So, the multidisciplinary revolution in biology. I was very lucky. Luck is very important in life. I was lucky to be born in 1947 because this meant I was a teenager in the 50s, and I read Scientific American, and I saw papers that were revolutionizing biology, papers by people like Francis Crick, who determined the structure of DNA. Later, I came to know Crick quite well. John Kendrew, who determined the structure of the first protein. We now know the structure of thousands of proteins. The first structure was determined in 1959. Structure of DNA is simple. Structure of protein is really complicated. And then Max Perutz, who in fact was the leader who had Crick as his student and Kendrew as his assistant. And he was a genius in social engineering. These people were the people who influenced me as a teenager. But I was also very lucky because I came to England from South Africa when I was 16 years old and obtained very early independence, essentially through luck. When I got to England in 1963, John Kendrew had won the Nobel Prize in 1962, and he made a television program about basic molecular biology. You can see there what the program was about. It was first shown in January 1964. And this is a basic introductory class to how physics is driving biology. And I was very lucky because I came to stay on vacation with my uncle and aunt in London, had never seen TV before, and spent my whole time there watching TV. There was only one channel, so I got to see Kendrew, decided I want to work with him. He said, not so fast, and he then sent me to Israel. He sent me to Israel because he realized that to understand the structure of big molecules, you had to first understand the structure of small molecules. And he knew that in Israel, this man, Shneur Lifson, was working with his student Ariel Varshel to try to understand the energetics of how small molecules interact. So I got sent there. I ended up writing the computer program that they wrote. I was 20 years old, but essentially ever since, I've been a totally independent scientist. Very lucky to have been able to do that. So my work that ended up getting the Nobel Prize is called multi-scale modeling of macromolecules. Multi-scale modeling is essentially choosing the right level of simplicity for any model. That's true for anything. If you want to explain something to somebody, you need to choose words that are simple enough to be easily understood, but not so simple as that they have no meaning. And let me just turn now to the third part about, is basic science important? That might seem obvious, but not necessarily. So let's just look at this. So what is good basic science? Good basic science must enable future work. It must be useful for new discoveries, and it must be totally unexpected. Because if it was expected, it would be already being used. Some examples. I'm taking examples from my field, but there are many other examples. The sequences of DNA and proteins. We are now very aware of basic biology. The previous talk was very focused on the virus structure, the virus sequence, the virus proteins. All of that was basic biology that goes back to discoveries made in the 50s and 60s. The structure of DNA, the structure of proteins, monoclonal antibodies. All the antibody drugs that were talked about come from monoclonal antibodies. Structure of key components of life, and so on. So essentially, these are the obvious things we need to know, but again, I'm focusing on a field that I know. So what is the way to get basic science? The idea is based on a story written in 1557 in Italy. It's a story about the three princes of Serendip. And these princes were very smart, but also very lucky. A bit like ancient Sherlock Holmes, who was smart but very lucky. Now, what is Serendip? Serendip is actually the island of Sri Lanka. The old name for it is Serendip. And these princes came from Serendip. And as a result, in English, we have the word serendipity. So discovery is random. Scientific discovery that is fundamental and new is a little bit like winning a ticket in a lottery. It's very hard to plan how to win in a lottery, but there are some things you have to do. You have to buy tickets. And maybe if you can buy many tickets, you'll have more chance. And you also, so this is strange. If I had tried to explain this maybe to the Minister of Science and Technology, he would say, we want to plan the science. Unfortunately, we see time and time again that the big discoveries come from where you shouldn't be looking, or at least logically you say you shouldn't be looking. So, you know, we would like to know what is important in basic science. The trouble is that everyone thinks their own work is important, and it's quite difficult to know what paper or what research led to fundamental new discoveries. You have to really be very careful, go back and read all the papers. It's a hard thing to do. You also have to know the field. So I'm cheating. I'm going to simply say that the Nobel Committee knows what good science is. Now, it's not necessarily true, but it's quite hard to use other things. It's absolutely true that the Nobel Committee puts more effort into choosing Nobel Prize winners than all the other prizes put together. They actually meet 25 times a year in person. They never use email, and they have very high security. They start out with 1,000 possible candidates every year and winnow that down to 1, 2, or 3. So let's just look at the number of Nobel Prizes, and I'm looking here in the USA. I'm looking every 10 years, and I'm showing the number of Nobel Prizes in basic science and other scientists. Now, what is basic science? Basic science is when you are working at a research institute and your main activity is science. For example, there are people who work in hospitals who also write papers. I would call that non-basic science. In the same way, also in universities, people have another job, they have to teach. They also do research, but they have to teach. So what we've done here is in green, we show the Nobel Prizes given at institutes dedicated completely to research. And you can see that most of the Nobel Prizes go to institutes dedicated to research. Sorry. We can also say, let's just look at the Nobel Prizes in the United States as a function of time. And you can see that in 1900, there were no Nobel Prizes in the USA. By 1930, the USA was getting maybe a half the world, 1940 a quarter, and suddenly, as a result of the Second World War, the United States started to have more Nobel Prizes every 10 years than the rest of the world put together. So you can see 1950, 1960, 1970, and so on. Why? Because many, many people were driven out of Europe because of the war and became immigrants to the United States. About 1/3 of the Nobel Prizes in the United States are from people who weren't born in the United States. That's more than any other country. Now, if you look at the last decade, it's possible that the rest of the world is catching up. The United States is losing its advantage, but the data is still small, and I need to check this more. Okay. It turns out that it's very common for a Nobel Prize winner to study with another Nobel Prize winner. In the United States, 40% of the Nobel Prize winners studied were a postdoc or a PhD student with another Nobel Prize winner. And I think that is not, it's an indication of being encouraged and think it's possible. It's also very interesting that there are actually chains of Nobel Prize winners. On the right, we have go back in time. So you can see there's a long line starting in 1905, Adolf von Baer, then in 1902, Emil Fischer, Otto Warburg, Otto Mayhoff, all in Germany. Then we have Severo Ochoa, a Spanish person, Arthur Kornberg, an American, Paul Berg, another American, and Roger Kornberg, another American. So we have 8 people, all of whom studied under each other. We have a similar thing for Mario Capecci. He was mentored by Jim Watson, who was mentored by Kendrew, who was mentored by Bragg, who was mentored by Bragg's father. Now, what this is telling us also is that science has moved from Europe to the United States. People in the United States studied in Europe, came back, and had that science. And I see sometimes China as sort of being in basic science like the United States was in 1950, i.e., they are studying out of the country, coming back, and becoming leaders in their own right. There are often centers of Nobel Prizes. I don't have much time to spend on this. But we might actually ask, how much does it cost to get a Nobel Prize? Now, this came out of Scientific American, and it has the total amount of money spent by a country on research. This includes defense research, it includes medical research. The numbers are truly huge. This is 1915. The United States is spending $450 billion, and so on. And different countries spend different amounts. That blue circle to the right of how big is science is what was spent on the Manhattan Project during the Second World War, making an atomic bomb. You can see the International Space Station, the Apollo program. So every year, countries spend a huge, huge amount on research, industrial research, military research, and so on. What do they get? So you can, again, do a very simple-minded calculation, plot the number of Nobel Prizes in a 20-year period against the amount of spending, and you find that there's a sort of relationship on a log-log scale. Basically, though, in some countries, a Nobel Prize is less expensive than in other countries. The cheapest Nobel Prizes are in the United Kingdom, but it's $13 billion of research spending per Nobel Prize. Other countries are spending many times more than that. And the reason is partially that you have to spend money for a long time. I got a Nobel Prize in 2013 for work that I did 45 years before. All the work that got me the Nobel Prize was done between the ages of 20 and 26. So it just takes a very long time. You have to plant the seeds a long time before. Okay, so you need money, you need dedication to research. What else do you need? And in order to look at this, I want to look at, as a joke, how to win many Nobel Prizes. Because there actually are two places in the world, two institutions, that have very many Nobel Prizes. One is the Rockefeller University in New York City. They have, I don't know what the number is, but over 100 years, I think they have 25 Nobel Prizes in different areas. Another place I want to talk about is the place where I actually studied, the Medical Research Council Laboratory of Molecular Biology in Cambridge. This was a very small building. They then made it into a very big building. It now reminds me of any of the shopping malls in China, but it's still a science institution. They ended up getting, I forget the number, but it's at least 25 or 26 Nobel Prizes. I need to update this because since I made the slide, they've got 5 more, or 4 more. And what's interesting is that many of the people who got Nobel Prizes actually came to Cambridge. The ones in yellow came to Cambridge from the United States. The ones in yellow came to Cambridge from South Africa or South America. So this place was a magnet for Nobel Prize winners. Some stayed there, others went back to their home country. So this shows in a very concrete way how a center of excellence can create a spread of Nobel Prizes and fundamental basic science around the world. Just to look a little bit about the MRC. Here's Crick again, somebody who I spent 2 years working with. Fred Sanger was remarkable. He actually got 2 Nobel Prizes, one for sequencing proteins and one for sequencing DNA. Now, we sequence DNA millions of times a day now with various PCR tests and things like that. It used to be very difficult. And this one man spent his whole life just learning how to sequence things. He was totally dedicated to this task. John Kendrew, whom I already talked about, who had a great deal of influence on me. And another person whom I didn't mention, a man called Cesar Milstein, an interesting story. He was the person who discovered a way to have cells make a single antibody, monoclonal antibodies. He did this work in Cambridge, and he thought it should be patented. So he talked to the Medical Research Council, who funds him, and they set up a committee. And the committee spent 3 months deciding about this, and at the end of 3 months they said, no, this idea will never be worth any money, it's not worth patenting. Monoclonal antibodies are probably worth $100 billion a year. Every single antibody drug is made by monoclonal antibodies. So it just shows how difficult it is to know when an idea is worth money and isn't. So I've showed, you could actually ask, what is special about the Medical Research Council? The groups are well supported. A group of 5 people is typically supported at the level of maybe £1 million a year. There's no visible bureaucracy. When I was at the Medical Research Council, if I wanted anything, I just went to the store window and signed my name. No order, no competitive bidding. I'm sure if I was there now and I wanted a laptop or iPad, I would just go there and they would give me one. The head of that laboratory, Max Perutz, spent every single day reducing bureaucracy for the people working there. Very important lesson, because he said they were much more valuable doing research than filling in forms. Small groups, about 5 in all. This goes back to the Nobel principle of lottery. It's better to have 25 people in 5 groups than 25 people in 1 group, because we don't know which idea is going to make the breakthrough. Intense peer pressure. In Cambridge, you were never as good as your last paper. You might have 3 papers in science. The question is what about your next paper? And finally, there's no hierarchy. I was a student there. There were many Nobel Prize winners. In fact, there were more Nobel Prize winners than students. So the students actually felt better than the Nobel Prize winners. So again, this is probably something we could all learn about doing really top quality fundamental basic science. So I've answered these questions. I just want to end by mentioning Max Perutz again. He said something which, in these days of coronavirus and very strong disputes about science, said something that I often think about. In science, truth always wins. Truth is something that is very special, because if it's true, even if everyone says it's wrong, it'll be shown to be true. And this is a very important principle. He was a wonderful man, and I miss him very much. Thank you all for your attention.
Thank you. A very serious and diverse researcher and scientist. Last month, Professor Levitt just had his 74th birthday. You cannot tell that, right? Happy birthday to you, Professor Levitt. Your energy and vitality have shown that as long as you keep your curiosity, you will be able to create miracles. He's also a lover of Chinese digital gadgets. With a mobile phone in China, anywhere you go, you can get a lot of things done. Well, Professor Levitt, you are welcome, more than welcome, to use mobile in China, especially WeChat Pay. Thank you. Next, we are going to have Mr. Pu Muming, academician of the Chinese Academy of Sciences and director of the Center of Brain Science and Brain Intelligence in Shanghai, to deliver a speech. Mr. Pu is a well-known brain scientist in China. Over the years, he and his team has developed an autism model and has produced monoclonal monkeys in his labs, among other major scientific outcomes. Today, he will talk about brain science, brain disease, and brain intelligence. Distinguished leaders and guests, it is my honor to attend the Pujiang Innovation Forum today. My topic today is a very broad one, but I will also be very quick to go through these 3 subtopics. So let's first take a look at the goal of brain science. It's very clear. It is to understand the functional concepts and work mechanisms of our brains, and to get some inspirations from that, and to actually emulate its functions and develop brain-like artificial intelligence systems. And also, we would like to know the normal status of the brain to better protect it, to treat brain diseases and injuries, and to promote the development of intelligence. About 6-7 years ago, China already started making plans to initiate major science programs, and one of them is brain science. Just like other countries in the world, the US and Japan, China also started our brain science research very early. I would like to thank Vice Minister Xi here in the audience. He helped us develop this framework on research, basic research on brain science, including the cognitive functions, the neurological foundations of the cognitive functions of the brain, how to treat relevant diseases, and how to develop intelligent technologies based on such knowledge. We also would like to get more knowledge on the whole picture of the neurological connections of our brain. It's what we call a spectrum, mapping of the whole brain. It's also an international big science project. We need to understand first the structure and then understand its functions. To understand its structure, you have to have high definition of the neurological connections and the whole network. It will be an international project, and we are delighted that the Ministry of Science and Technology has already started the Chinese component of this project last year. This project has two major wings. One is to contribute to the diagnosis and treatment of brain diseases. We would like to understand and actually to identify major brain diseases, early diagnosis and interventions. We want to develop a community and clinical database and a base of samples for such diseases. And the other wing is to develop a brain-like intelligent technologies, to develop brain and computer interface, to develop intelligent unities. We want to develop machines that think like our brains.
We also hope that such kind of computing will also take place on hardware. We will develop hardware simulating brain and brain interface with a machine. How we could allow machine to capture information from the brain and using such brain information to control the mechanics and eventually control the really do what the brain wants the system to do. I believe going forward, after 5 to 10 years, artificial intelligence, its forefront is brain-like intelligence. So that's why we are doing this advanced plan. We hope that when the trend comes forward, we will still be there at the front line. About the basic brain functions, I think there are some basic functions for the brain, like it could sense, it could learn, it could control emotions, it could help you make decisions. But we want to know how the brain works. What is constituting this loop of working in the brain? And second, those are the basic ones. And then the more advanced functions like empathy, sympathy, and social behavior, senses, and language, and how does the neural network work, what's behind that. And then we also want to understand how the brain develops from a baby all the way to an adult. What's the process of the neural growth? Just hope that we could get some inspiration so that we could build something based on that. And we want to know how the environment affects the neural network. And then we hope that we could have a panoramic mapping of the brain neural network, both of human and of smaller animals. We need to have a panoramic understanding of the whole neural network, just so that we don't make any partial mistakes. So we map that entirely. And we try to look at it from 3 levels. In hospitals, you can see MRI. You will see the strands of neurons, where it goes. On the left side, you can see up to tens of thousands of neural fibers. And if we go down to millimeter level, like a nanometer level, you can see cells. At cell level, that's up to 10 up to 6 times the power of 10 minus, and then all the way down to nanometer electronic microscope. It's very hard to get a high definition. So right now we are still at the millimeter level, micrometer level. Right now, perhaps China is leading the world in micro level, and then we do the coloring, and we do the CT topography, and then we remodel the structure in 3 dimensions, and then we could map the route. This is a technology that's being led by a professor of Central China University of Technology. Now we could recreate the neural map for rats. That's going to take place in the next 5 years. And in the next 15 years, we will be able to do that for monkeys. 52 cells mapping. And that's how complicated it is, just 52 neural cell. And for a very small cell, you could basically have connection covering the entire brain. So that's how complicated it is. But in order to understand that, we need mathematician, and information scientists. So this is a very typical interdisciplinary scientific work. And about diseases related to brain. The social burdens for diseases, and the most burdensome, the most expensive disease, in other words, are brain disorders, including unipolar disorder, substance use, mental disorders, neuropsychiatric disorders. So in terms of social burdens, brain diseases, brain disorders are more expensive than other types of diseases. More importantly, we don't have treatment, therapy for that. For example, if you have really mental disorder, mental anxiety, depression, you don't have quite effective drugs to treat that. Perhaps you have some that was created a decade or 2 decades ago. If it doesn't work, you don't have anything else to deal with that. So if we don't make good progress in treatment of brain disease in the next 2 to 3 decades, I think our healthcare system will just break down. That's not just in China, but across the world. What are the examples of major brain diseases like autism, mental disorder, anxiety, substance abuse, depression, and Alzheimer's, among others, in terms of age-wise? And what has caused such brain disorder? What caused the depression? What caused the Alzheimer's. There are some theories to try to explain that, but none of which is satisfactory. Perhaps it will take decades of years of research to really find the reason, the rationale behind these diseases. So we cannot wait. It's going to be too late for us to find the root cause of that. So before we even identify the root cause, we should be able to find some like biomarkers, some special molecule in your bodily fluid or in your blood to make a determination that perhaps someone is inclined to develop such of symptoms, then intervenes as early as possible. Some signs. Based on such a signs, you could intervene. You don't know why it's caused, or why it's there, but if you know some signs are most likely the precursor of these diseases, like loss of memory, much faster than ordinary people, you will find a way to really enhance one's memory of that individual, just so that they don't regress so fast. They don't get sicker and sicker faster and faster when time goes on. Of course, there are medication, and we are trying to develop more physical or mental treatment therapies to help us intervene. And in order to do this interventional methods, you have to test it on animals. Primates, for example. If that works on primates, we could really carry out some clinical trial. If the animal model is good, then it's more likely that the odds of success for clinical trials will increase. The past 2 to 3 decades, the brain disorder treatment mostly were done on the experiments on the mouses, on guinea pigs. But even if it works on mouses, do not work on human beings. 70 to 80% of such experiments fail, up to billions of dollars of investment, but eventually didn't work, mostly because clinical trial before the real clinical trial took place, the animal test did not work out perfectly well. We have to find primates, not mouse. That's why in 2012, starting from 2012, we did cloned monkeys. Mouses are good, but monkeys are even better. We want to find. In order to find monkeys of the exactly same genetic design, you have to clone that. If only by clone the monkeys, you will know that it's really the effect of the drug. So in 2017, we created 2 cloned monkeys. It was very difficult. Even in the States, scientists, they gave it up. These 2 scientists, Liu Zheng and Sun Qiang, both of them in their 30s, just late 20s, they are very, very diligent, entrepreneurial. The American scientists even failed in that, but it took them 5 years to succeed in this. At first we predicted that they could finish by 2020, but they accomplished that 3 years ago. Once you got that, you could really get some disease models. Like the first 2, they are perfectly healthy monkeys. We want to clone 2 diseased animals. We knock out their health genes. The one on the left side, the monkey had signs of depression, of anxiety. Like this monkey hid in the corner of the cage, very depressed. And we took one of the monkeys, a skin cell, and we cloned a same one. When that same monkey was born, get exactly the same signs. That's the benefit of these kind of monkeys, because if it's body cell cloned, that's why they are exactly identical. in terms of genetic science, and we hope that we could develop drugs on them that could perhaps solve depression. On the left side, once the drug is administered on the sick monkey, it just immediately worked out. After a few months, the effect wears off, then it gets back to what it was earlier, just to find some place to hide. So these primates are very close to human beings. It's quite likely that they will serve as very effective tools for us to test the new therapeutics and medication. Last year, we proposed a major plan in Shanghai to have a massive screening of brain health. In order to know that, we want to screen a big populace to understand what the ordinary health functions of a human being is like. We go to the hospital, we do physical checkup, but we never check our brain. We check hypertension, we check cardiovascular disease. But what about our memories? Nobody checks our memory. Nobody checks our attention span. So we hope that we could have some quantity-based, quantifiable, broad-spectrum, effective and simplified tool set for checking one's brain functions. We developed 15 items of the tool set to check your brain functions by playing some games, moving your eyeballs, but all of which are quantifiable. In perhaps 1 hour, we will give you assign a figure to your brain function. We will know what your short-term, long-term memory functions are. We hope that this entire tool set will enter into your brain health checking system. We already piloted the first version of this tool set in some major hospitals in Shanghai, as well as a mental health center in Shanghai. We want to massively screen the entire populace just so we know what are the like a positive distribution of ordinary healthy people. And if your sign is outside of the distribution with the statistical difference, then we will know that you have to have a bit of intervention. For example, your memory loss is like way worse than the average population by up to 2 differential. Then you will have to have some treatment. This is unprecedented. Anywhere in the world, this kind of quantifiable brain health checkup tool sets are nowhere. Most of the questions are in questionnaire. They are quality-based, not quantity-based. They just ask them if you remember your parents' names. These are very subjective, not objective enough, not in numbers.
We hope in 2050 this can be scaled to the whole nation or the whole world. In this way, we will have Chinese standards which will contribute to brain health around the world. I have little time left. Now I want to talk about the brain-machine interface. What does this mean? The interface between the brain and the machines and integration. How to adjust the brain. You can use electricity, magnetism, light, and ultrasound. There is another trend which is to research the algorithms of a new generation of machines and study how the brain computes. We hope that some theories can be used in AI and machine learning. And also, we need to develop our hardware. We have good algorithms, and they need to be turned into something like processors, chips, or the frameworks of the computer. Ultimately, we hope we can have some smart androids which can take care of you, can do your chores, can play with kids. They need to have intelligence, which is now impossible. This is our future goal. big data processing. I just mentioned how to understand the internet. How do we process information? We need a lot of new theories and technologies to analyze data. So that's what I want to share today. And now I want to talk about something you are very interested in, the interface between the brain and the machine. Elon Musk has demonstrated his device. What is happening in China? What is our goal? Now I want to talk about this. There are two directions. First, brain activity control. Musk does this. He takes information, electrical information from the brain and use that to control the devices. For example, a monkey may want to play games, and there are brain waves from the brain of the monkey, and the signal is used to control the devices. Also, this can help paralyzed people to control their prosthetics. This is a usage. And there is another approach. You use electrical information from devices to control the brain activities. The most ideal situation is a closed loop. The brain controls devices, and there are feedbacks to the devices, and the devices interchange the brain. This is the goal, but this is not doable. Musk can do the lower part, but we hope that in 5 or 10 years we can have this closed loop brain-computer interface. This can have medical uses or other uses. We can have some non-invasive approaches, for example, taking some brainwaves from the skull. This will be able to be applied in many areas. And also we can have non-invasive signals. But what is the barrier in this area? First, how do we decipher brain information? Now we don't really understand brain activity. Monkeys want to play games. We don't know how they generate signals, but we can observe the information in the brain of the monkey and correlate that with the intended activity. We just look at when the monkey is playing games, what the signals are present in the brain. We can make predictions. We can use machine learning to decipher what the brain waves mean. This is only superficial. We don't really understand what the brain is doing. We hope that we can have more information. We hope that we can have more electrodes and have more information, and then we can decipher more accurately. So we need to regulate the brain. And also, we need to know which part of the brain to stimulate. If we don't understand the structure, we don't know the function of a certain stimulation of the brain. We will only do that blindly. So these are the major issues facing brain-computer interface. We need answers from brain science. This is what we are working on. For example, this soft electrodes, they are implanted into the brain. Elon Musk is also doing that. This does not stimulate the immune cells. It can preserve the neurons healthy, and we can have thousands of channels. We can test the brain signals. So now we are doing this in guinea pigs and masks. But now we lag behind Elon Musk in the size and integration of these devices. This is about technology. We are lagging behind in developing integrated systems. But the lag is not very big. We can do this automatic electrode positioning. We use laser and then insert the electrode and avoid the blood vessels. We can do that. We can do stimulus. This is difficult. Elon Musk has not been able to do this. When you stimulate, you need to be precise. So this is the location of the electrode, and there is fluorescent presentation. You can see the stimulation of the cells. The softer electrodes can help to stimulate the neurons, so we can have a closed loop. But where do we stimulate? When do we stimulate? And stimulate how much? We don't know these questions really well. Our understanding of the brain is still an ongoing process. The electrode can be inserted into many areas. We can stimulate the brain, and we can know the connections in the brain. We have functional connections. We try to see the impact on different areas of the brain. This monkey is conscious, and we record thousands of channels. We can see the activity of single neurons. We get a lot of information, and we need to decipher. Now we understand the messages, the signals, and the monkeys can play games. And playing games is a benchmark. This is a benchmark set by Elon Musk. In brain-computer interface, we are lagging behind the US by 5 or 10 years. But Shanghai has a special program. In 3 years, we can reach Elon Musk's current level. But Musk is still going forward. But we are in different directions. We need to work on the closed loop. They haven't finished that yet. I believe within 5 years, we can be on par with Elon Musk. This is the current trend. Thank you. Brain disease accounts for 28% of all diseases. This is a big number, and this tells us the urgency and importance of research. Over 10 years ago, he wrote a letter to his students saying that as scientists, we need to devote our energy to research. Every day, working 8 hours is far from enough. No scientist working 8 hours a day can be successful. So, a true scientist goes forward with a lot of responsibilities. Thank you. Our next speaker comes from Huawei, the Vice President and the rotating chairman of Huawei Technology. He will talk about the innovation practice and inspirations from Huawei. Mr. Xu, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I want to thank you for your invitation, for participating in the forum. Innovation has become a hotspot topic in socioeconomic development. Innovation for every company and organization is a problem we think about and face every day. Over the past 30 years of Huawei, it's about consistent innovation. When I received the invitation and agreed to come, I thought what I would be talking about. At first, I wanted to talk about our innovation philosophy and how Huawei organizes its innovation. But then I realized that we don't have any special innovation philosophy, anything different. It's all about implementation. You know that in the world, in China, more and more people know about Huawei because of 5G. And they get familiar with Huawei because of 5G. So I think in the mobile telecommunications industry, in the growth of this industry, this can be something that I can share about to give you some inspirations from the innovation of Huawei. I'm not an expert in any particular field, so I can only talk about some practice and inspirations of innovation from a business perspective. You know, from GSM to 3G to 4G, 5G cell phones. Looking at the history of the wireless communication industry, we know that it's related to everybody. It's all about a better life for everyone. In 2G era, we worked on GSM products, and at that time GSM products were in wide use. In 3G era, we were the challenger. People already had products, but they were not used widely. In the 4G era, we were on par with the whole industry, and we developed the standards and our products. Based on customer needs, we innovate. And we have distributed the base stations. And the US now is doing open rank to counter Huawei's single rank. Thanks to our continuous innovation, we have caught up, and in wireless communications, we achieved differentiation and a leadership position. Looking back, we can see that in any period of a company's development, when you are catching up or a challenger or when you are a leader, you need to focus on customer needs and innovate. Only innovation can help you catch up and be faster and be a leader. In any stage of industrial development, we need innovation. Especially in the research phase, we need to innovate. The product phase, we need to focus on customer needs.
Our 5G initiative has gone through the whole cycle from research development to product development. We haven't been through the whole process of industrial development in previous 8 stages for 2G, 3G, and 4G. For example, in the era of 3G, we were not involved in the development of relevant standards. In the 4G era, we were part of the standard development initiative, but we just stopped there. But in the era of 5G, we were involved in research, standard development, and the industrialization of the technology. So I would like to focus on 5G technology today to share with you our innovation practice and hopefully can give you some inspirations. The journey we have gone through in the development of 5G could happen to anyone, any industry in China. what we felt most strongly is that 5G development is driven by a vision. In 2013, at the Global Mobile Broadband Forum in the UK, I shared with the audience our vision for 5G. Our goal was to achieve 1,000 times of capacity increase, 100 billion IoT devices, and 10 gigabytes to users in terms of speed and ultra-low latency. And all of this are being turned into reality. It is because of our ambition and courage that we have been able to come this far. It is very important to have a vision for the future. That is the starting point. Another takeaway is that you need to make your decisions early and do not hesitate to invest. We start our 5G product development in 2009. We established the first CT lab. At the end of 2009, the first 4G commercial network was officially launched in Sweden. At that time, 4G licenses were not available in China yet. In 2013, we decided to step up our investment in 5G technologies. We plan to invest at least $6 million in this program. This does not include our investment on product development. In 2009, the first global 5G network was launched. So it is a continuous process. Today, when we look back, actually the R&D input was not as big as we have imagined. We did not use all the investment, and what we felt is that the earlier you invest, the smaller amount you might need to spend on it. When we first went out to look for partners, the cost was not that high. So this has led us to start our research on 6G at an early stage. Another thing we learned is that sometimes you have multiple paths. For example, in our 5G research, we have found that there could be multiple paths, multiple technological paths for us to take. But we are not sure which one is the best one. So we have explored multiple paths at the same time. And ultimately, we'll find that the best path might not be the one you have imagined in the first place. And we believe that all the teams that work on different paths are equally successful. And it is also important to push the boundaries. Each generation of technologies is a revolution in itself. You have to keep on innovating. Every time it is about making breakthroughs. And that is also the case with 5G. Shannon launched its theory on IT in 1948, and in 1967, the Viterbi decoding algorithm was proposed. In 1991, turbo code was invented, and in 2008, the polar code was invented. Huawei has kept on researching, building upon these technologies, and now polar code has become the key code for 5G technologies. It is like Qualcomm has done for 2G, 3G, and 4G technologies, who use the CDM as the main code. Another takeaway is that you have to collaborate extensively worldwide. The 5G technologies have been the result of global open cooperation between governments, industry, academia, and research institutes. We have worked together with over 100 professors in 300 projects in over 20 countries. We have promoted cross-industry cooperation for 5G applications, including 5G Auto Alliance, Industrial Internet and Automatic Alliance, 5G Slicing Association, and the 5G DNA Industrial Alliance. The 5G application industry area, which is supported by the Ministry of Information Technology in China, has become a major network that has generated a lot of other innovations based on this technology. So these applications have really shown the value of 5G technology. Industrial policy also matters. No matter how many innovations you have, without proper policy support, you will not be able to promote the growth of industry based on such technologies. So up-to-date, proper policies would drive the growth of industries. Otherwise, they might hurt the growth of industries. In the early days, the industry has a lot of debates on which technology to choose as the backbone, either mid-band spectrum or the millimeter wave-based technology. After a lot of consultations, we have found that the millimeter wave spectrum is still not suitable for us to deploy in China. So we have chosen the mid-band spectrum as the backbone technology. Today in the world, 68 countries, 162 carriers have used the mid-band spectrum, and less than 5 countries have chosen millimeter wave, which we believe is still not ripe to deploy on a large scale. So look back, today we think that the decision made by the ministry is proper and intelligent. Another important lesson we've learned is that you have to go in line with other partners across the value chain. For every step, for every link on the value chain, you need to have partners who work together with you, and they need to move at the same pace with you. We have to synchronize across the value chain. This would allow the technology to be utilized on a large scale. You have to look at all production factors. This would underpin the large-scale development of the whole industry, and this will promote a fast application of the technology. And you have to keep innovating. 5G is an outcome, but it is also a starting point. For any industry, any product, this is a common principle. We have gone through the journey of customer-driven to vision-driven innovations. as I've said, the previous technologies, 2G, 3G, 5G, are mainly driven by customers' needs, but 5G is more driven by our vision. You have to keep seeking breakthroughs. In Huawei, innovation has already become a culture. We try to meet customers' needs through innovation and create more values for our customers. It has become a day-to-day philosophy of Huawei. Any business, any organization has its own unique culture and characteristics. They could have been at different stages of their growth, but one thing remains true, as being shown by Huawei. Innovation is always essential, and it happens all the time. I hope that our practice and our lessons could be inspiring to others. As I've shown here, we have 9 key takeaways that I've shown with you, and thank you for your time. Thank you, Mr. Xi. Dr. Xi is also the youngest among our 4 speakers this afternoon. He joined Huawei in 1993, and he has been overseeing a team of more than 70,000 employees. One of the words in his name in Chinese, it means integrity. So I think that characterizes him very correctly. Integrity and the pursuit of truth are what we need for this era. So thank you again, Dr. Xi, for the presentation. With that, we conclude all the presentations for this session. I would like to thank our speakers again and our audience for staying with us so far. Thank you all for your attention. Is 2G, 3G, 5G are mainly driven by customers' needs, but 5G is more driven by our vision. You have to keep seeking breakthroughs. In Huawei, innovation has already become a culture. We try to meet customers' needs through innovation and create more values for our customers. It has become a day-to-day philosophy of Huawei.